All right, class. I am here, and this is our last lecture for this semester. I would like to thank each of you for the hard work that you put in this semester and look forward to, for those that are graduating, to seeing being a part of your graduation this Saturday. And for those that are returning next semester, I look forward to potentially having you again in another class. Um, We don't have much content this week, as you know by looking at Canvas, but I do want to remind you that you do have your final assignment that is due by May 4th, that's Sunday, by 11:59 p.m. Make sure that you get that in on time because I'm not accepting any late assignments for this week. This is the last week of the semester, and I think we all received the email from the dean stressing the importance to turn in your work on time because there are no late assignments that are being accepted at the end of the semester. So with that said, I do have a video that I'd like to show you about ethics and maybe hopefully giving kind of a summation, a continued summation because we started that on Monday, but a continued summation, bringing this class to a logical conclusion. The thing about ethics is it falls under philosophy. And in philosophy, we don't necessarily always get to the logical conclusion, but with ethics, we can. Philosophy is a ever-growing and changing field. Ethics, as we know, are changing and growing. As society's ethics change, legislation follows eventually. So I asked the question Monday about what are ethics and business philosophy? What are they going to look like in the future? So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start the video. After the video, I'll release the class and you have some extra time to work on your final assignment or work for other classes or whatever you need to do. Just make sure that you get everything submitted on time. And let me share our video. There we go. And I am recording, so that's good.
As a full-time YouTuber, believe it or not, I spend
Get
most of my
past the
time actually
advertisement.
writing. Grammarly's AI features help me save so much.
Weeks ago, I was walking the dog through the condo complex near my home, and the parking spots were pretty empty, and I looked down and saw a wallet in the middle of one. I debated what to do. Should I move the wallet to a safe spot so that if the owner came back to get it, they could find it? I might have done that if it was a mitten or a scarf, but this was a wallet. It was 10:30 in the morning, so the person probably wasn't coming back anytime soon. And what if someone else saw the wallet and decided to take it? I picked it up. I could see there was a license inside, and I didn't recognize the name or the face, and the address was over an hour away from where I was. So I did what I'd want someone to do if they found my wallet in a parking spot. I called the local police, and they sent two officers out to get it. I don't know what happened, but I'm hoping that the wallet got back to its owner safely and that she was pretty relieved. It seems kind of simple, but would everyone have made that same choice? Do you use that question, otherwise known as the golden rule, to govern your actions? What would I want someone to do if the situation was reversed? Now, what about the situation where there's not a person on the other side? My husband and I have two kids. One's in college, one's in high school. They've been skiing since they were 3. And where we ski, kids ski free until they're 7. And then there's a children's ticket from 7 to 12. And once you turn 13, you have to pay the full adult price. I'm sure a lot of parents pretended that their kids are under 7 or under 13. It's a big price difference. But we didn't. Why? Well, what kind of example would we have been setting for our kids who could plainly see on their lift ticket what age bracket we bought? Even when they were under 7, they got a ticket that said that. Maybe the ski resort wasn't watching closely, but our kids were, and this was a teaching moment. Be honest, don't steal. It's our job as parents to teach our kids to do the right thing. Now, I'm not perfect. I look back on plenty of situations and cringe. Maybe I didn't treat someone the right way or didn't handle a situation very well, but on the whole, I try to follow the rules. And when there are no rules, I try to do the right thing, understanding that doing the right thing can be a matter of opinion. So, how many of you are rule followers? I'm a CPA by training. Good to see that. And there are a lot of rules that govern my profession. I graduated here from Fairfield. And even just the fact that debits have to equal credits is a rule that we all embrace, and maybe why we like being accountants. We like that things balance. We have a code of professional conduct for CPAs, and in Connecticut, to maintain my license, I have to take an ethics course every 3 years. And most professions have some sort of codified professional ethics to govern them, and they can come in handy. But when I think of ethics, I think beyond published guidelines. I think about personal ethics. What guides us on a day-to-day basis to do the right thing, treat people the right way? Because on a daily basis, we're faced with situations like the ones I just described, but there's no law, there's no regulation that's going to tell us what we have to do. And all we have to rely on is our own sense of personal ethics, our moral compass. A few years ago, after I made a lighthearted comment about being a rule follower, someone said to me, "You don't get to be where you are by following the rules." I was kind of taken aback. At the time, I was the fairly newly promoted CEO of a private company after having been a CFO for about 9 years. And in my opinion, the fact that I was a rule follower by nature is exactly why I was promoted to CEO. Our investors trusted me to lead the company through a pretty difficult transitional time. But this person, who had only just met me, had a preconceived notion of my ethics based solely on the fact that I was a member of the C-suite. Wow. I get it, sort of. How many headlines do we see about executives having to step down from their posts for bad behavior? About rock star CEOs that we later find out were treating employees badly, having improper relationships, spending lavishly on personal items, supported by boards who look the other way because the CEO got financial results. Or stories of outright corruption like Enron, WorldCom, Theranos, people who did bad things hoping no one was watching and they wouldn't get caught. So where do personal ethics come from? In my case, they came first and foremost from my parents. My dad was an engineer, my mom was a home ec teacher, and they were what you would call really good people. I had a privileged upbringing. In my family, there was a lot of love, there was a lot of forgiveness. We went to church on Sundays, another place that helped form my moral compass. And we were taught to be humble and grateful and kind. My dad traveled a lot for business, which left most of the day-to-day raising of 5 kids to my mom. Later in life, when my mom was suffering from Alzheimer's, my dad took care of her at home as long as he safely could, and then he visited her every day once he had to make the decision to put her into a care facility. His personal ethics told him that this was the least he could do for this woman who he loved and who had provided so much care for him and to our family over the years. These are the people who raised me. But I think personal ethics come from a variety of sources during our formative years. Parents, grandparents, other family members, close friends, teachers, coaches, religious organizations, scouting organizations, schools. Really, almost everyone we come in contact with during those years has some sort of influence on our personal ethics, either as a role model of something to follow, or maybe just as importantly, something not to be. So, how does this play out in the business world? When asked what some of the hallmarks are of my career, I said, I hope that people would say that I act with integrity. And to me, that means being open and honest, dealing fairly with people, being authentic and accountable for the good and the bad, and encouraging others to do the same. After working for for a public accounting firm, I joined one of my clients as their controller. I really enjoy the entrepreneurial environment of that client, and I respected the CFO I'd be working for. And I feel like I really grew up professionally at that company. And Al, the CFO, had a big influence as my personal and professional ethics continued to develop. Al was smart, he was trustworthy, and he was able to navigate some pretty volatile personalities in a professional manner. People respected Al and listened when he had something to say. Al was and is a good person, whether or not anyone was watching. I was watching, and I was learning, and I wanted to be like Al. I've also had some other great mentors over the years, some with whom I've worked, and others that I just have known for years. People who will have coffee or lunch with me and just talk things through. And these people who are both successful and ethical are great sounding boards and give me something to strive for on a daily basis. So, what do you do when you're faced with a tough decision or a tough situation? I found out the hard way that everyone's motivations aren't necessarily ethical, either in business or in life, and I've had to deal with some not so nice people and keep it professional. So when I'm faced with a tough situation, I think to myself, is the way I'm handling this or the decision I'm making something I could defend? First, it was to my parents, and now to my husband or my kids. And if there's a person on the other side, I go back to that old standard. How would I want to be treated if the roles were reversed? Now, I don't make the right decisions all the time, and I know I don't please everybody all the time, but I do my best, and I try to do no harm, which I'm told is the baseline of ethics. And better yet, I try to do good. So, where are the headlines about the people who do the right thing day in and day out or treat people the right way? Well, who wants to read the headline about the CFO who chose the right accounting policies or didn't manipulate the quarterly earnings? Yay! But I think those people are a little bit more the norm than what we read about in the headlines. Now, being an ethical executive doesn't mean you're always making the popular decisions and doesn't mean you're a pushover in negotiations. You have a responsibility to your organization and you have to deal with financial realities. Sometimes that means taking a hard line in negotiations. It might mean cutting expenses or even staff. Where the ethics comes in is how you implement those decisions. What a difference it can make if you treat the people on the other side with dignity. I've always found that tough conversations can go better if the person on the other side has a window into my reasoning or at least knows I'm being straight with them. Doesn't mean they always go well, but hopefully better than they would otherwise. And losing a job is devastating, no matter what the circumstances. So, what a company or person does to help soften the blow and help that employee move on goes a long way on the morality scale. When I took over as CEO, we had just sold most of our ongoing operations to another company, and our former president had joined that company to lead the division. We both felt a huge responsibility to our team and worked together to find most people a spot at one of our corporations. So, what does it take to make a company's culture ethical? There's no question that the tone is set at the top. Ethical people like to work at ethical companies and follow ethical leaders. Most of the people I've worked with over the years really like producing a good work product. They like having good relationships with their customers, and they like to be proud of the organization that they're part of. And I've known people who will leave organizations whose methods of doing business or values don't align with theirs. I've done that. I don't mean that a company I worked for ever broke the law or violated any regulations, but maybe I would have handled certain situations differently or declined to work on certain clients if the choice had been mine alone. And as my husband says, you can complain about the people you work for a little bit, but if you stay, at some point, you become them. And so I chose to leave. So, what companies do you think of when you hear the words ethical company? It's easy to think of those who donate a certain amount of their profits to charities, those who support their communities financially and through volunteerism, those that are leading the way in decreasing their carbon footprint. But not all companies can afford to do these things in a material way. So, what are some of the other signs of ethical companies? How do they treat their employees and their customers? Are they transparent in their communications and operations? Do they take ownership when they make mistakes? What are they doing when no one's watching or there are no rules to follow? The tide seems to be changing, and boards are no longer supporting bad behavior. Executives are having to step down for ethical reasons, not just for poor financial results. Activist investors are holding public companies responsible, making sure they have independent and diverse views on their board, and also making sure that executives are making the right decisions. Companies now have to report on their environmental, social, and governance policies. The Business Roundtable, which is a group of almost 200 U.S. company CEOs, put out a paper a couple of months ago with a new definition of the purpose of a corporation. No longer is generating shareholder value the only priority. Higher on the list were delivering value to their customers, investing in their workforce, dealing fairly and ethically with their suppliers, supporting the communities in which they work, and last came generating shareholder value. Now, some of this is a little bit circular because in order to do well financially, you have to deliver value to your customers and invest in your workforce. And in order to support the communities in which you work, you have to have the resources to do that. But the point is made, all of these should be priorities. I hope it's not just PR, and I hope boards and governance and compensation policies support all of these priorities because in reality, how we compensate people is going to drive behavior. Today's theme is innovation and inspiration. With the evolution of technology, companies of all sizes are wading into uncharted waters. There are few rules, and those that exist have to be continually updated to keep pace with advancing technology. Companies have access to an enormous amount of information about us. The stories coming out recently about how some of those companies have used and profited off of our personal information are unsettling. What code of ethics were those executives following? AI and robotics implementations can pose even more challenging ethical considerations as the processes currently done by humans are automated. So, in my opinion, it's more important than ever that companies are staffed from the top down of people with strong personal ethics, people who can put in place policies to govern how the company will implement technology and protect personal information and help their employees deal with the changes that automation will bring. People who will act ethically and mentor others to do the same, who can put in place controls and rules where none currently exist. People who will do the right thing, even when no one is watching. Thank you.
There is a test in ethics called the sunlight test. And basically, what the sunlight test is what I am currently doing in private or thinking in my own mind, or this action or this conversation I'm having with this person. If everybody on the planet could witness it right now, if it could be televised or broadcast online or whatever, how would I be seen? Would I be seen as being ethical, or would I be seen as being acting improperly or something like that? And that's a good test to run by ourselves as leaders and as individuals. And I'm glad that Dawn brought up the the implementation of or integration of robotics and AI into the workforce, I think something companies are going to have to do in order to be ethical in this transitional stage is trying to find ways of either employing the people that are currently working for them after the transition or helping them to get into a new position, a new job somewhere, a new career. I think that's one of the greatest areas of uncertainty facing the workers right now is with all this AI and automation and robotics. Will I still have a job? I think a lot of people are worried about that. And I think they're right to be worried about that. And it's going to be a while until there's legislation to protect people. So to fill that gap in the meantime, companies need leaders who will make ethical decisions. Will you be one of them? Like I asked Monday, the future is in your hands. And one day the future will be someone else's past. What kind of past are you going to leave? What legacy are you going to leave as a leader? For those of you graduating, you stand at the cusp of your career. For those of you graduating and going to grad school, you have an opportunity to deepen your understanding of ethics in business and leadership. For those of you who are juniors, you have another year before you have to cross that threshold. But it's never too early to start thinking about how you can apply good, sound ethics in your decision making, in your leadership, and in the example you set before others. So that does conclude today's class. It concludes the class for the semester. I want to thank each of you for the hard work and dedication you've put into this course over the last 16 weeks. And I ask you just to be dedicated and persistent long enough to get that final assignment submitted, and make sure that you submit it on time, because I will not be accepting any late submissions for this week. With that said, if anybody has any questions, there's one person on Zoom right now, and if you have a question, feel free to ask Christian. If anybody watching this has any questions or comments, feel free to email me, please. Well, I guess that concludes today's class and our classes for this entire course for the semester. Again, I thank you. Don't be a stranger either. Some of my greatest colleagues used to be professors. So reach out to your professors and connect with them on LinkedIn or whatever. They're a good resource to have. You have a good day, and I am going to stop the recording.